Hello there and welcome back to the channel, everyone. Casey here, back with your weekly update. This week we're going to be doing some milling. It's a project I've been putting off for a while just because I didn't want to have to re-indicate my vise, but I've got it off now and we're going to get to work. Anyway, check it out. Oh, and please, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That helps me keep the weekly content coming. Anyway, thank you so much everyone for tuning back in, and let's get to it. All right, so as many of you know, I've been trying to stick some Chevrolet pattern wheels on my Ford Mustang. And it is strangely impossible to find brake drums that are drilled in more than one pattern. These right here are drilled in 5 on 4.5 and 5 on 4 3/4 because I added the 5 on 4 3/4 pattern to the drum. This is what I started with. This is not what I thought I was purchasing. The website that I was looking at showed the 5 on 4.5 pattern on the drum and nothing in between it. The drums that I received have a 5 on 4.5 inch pattern in between the 5 on 4.5 inch pattern. My plan to accomplish my desired goal here was to take and order a combination wheel spacer, a 5 on 4.5 by 5 on 4 3/4, and then use a transfer punch to punch and mark my holes in between. As you can see, the holes, my transfer punch basically would be landing in midair because the top of that 5 on 4.5 inch pattern hole is basically right in the center of my 5 on 4 3/4 inch hole. So I'm still planning to use the wheel spacer as a template to lay out my 5 on 4 3/4 inch holes. As you can see, with a 1/2 inch fine thread bolt in the drum, I've got all kinds of movement. So if I set my spacer in place and I bolt it down and all of my studs are there, say, then my 5 on 4 3/4 inch pattern will be off center, and my brake drum won't run true, won't line up with the center bore. That'll be an issue. So what I did to remedy that is I went and I got some bronze bushings that fit perfectly in the 5/8 hole, and then my 1/2 inch bolt fits right in between, and I've got like no wiggle at all. So with the bronze bushings and the 1/2 inch bolts in place on my drum, I can bolt my spacer on perfectly centered, and then I can use my spacer as a template to drill my holes. So through the magic of TV, with my bronze bushings in place, my 1/2 inch fine thread bolts, and the spacer bolted down, I now have a template that I can chuck up on the mill, and I'll show you guys how I'm gonna drill these holes. All right, so you've got a mill, and you've got a brake drum chucked up in it, and you've got a template on which to drill your holes. It's not simply enough with an aluminum template, especially, to just plunge drill, because the drill bit has a point on the end, and the point is going to want to follow any hole that it comes in contact with. That hole's going to act like a guide. So what I'd end up with is the drill bit flexing, possibly breaking. I'd end up with a template that ended up with an oval or oblong hole, and I'd end up with probably another 5 on 4.5 inch pattern, or maybe a 5 on 4 5/8 inch pattern. I don't know. My answer was to chuck up an old bolt in a lathe and turn it down, and this has a step in it, and it is exactly 1/2 inch, the smaller diameter portion, and then at the step it's 540 thousandths of an inch, and it fits perfectly into my spacer. So with a 1/2 inch collet chucked up in the mill, what I can do, get them to head on the mill down. Just have to get it close. Feed the table. And then it's just a matter of dialing in my hole. And when you get it exact, we're really close. Oh, there it is. So that, oh, see how it held up though? So we can go just a little teeny bit more. There it is. That's perfect. All right, so once we have our hole located and our column is locked, then we come in and we lock our table down. Because the next couple of steps that we're going to do, the table won't move from this spot. So once the table's locked down, check our feel one more time. So then we remove our gauge. We unlock our column. We have to raise the head just enough to get the gauge out, like so. And then we go to our 1/2 inch end mill because the hole is very close to 1/2 inch. And that's my trick. So an end mill versus a drill bit, because the end mill cuts on the edges and it won't try to follow the hole that's already in these brake drums. So lock our end mill in place, lower the head back down, lock the column once more, gauge our hand wheel, start the mill. The mill's going in there nice and centered. A little squirt of the oil. Go nice and slow until we touch off. There it is. Take our cut nice and slow. You can see chips falling through the center hole of the drum. We're advancing at about 1,000th a second, nice and slow. End mills aren't the best at plunge cuts. They're meant for side loads. We're about to break through. Down, pull it back out, and chip brush, remove our chips. And unlock our column, raise the head of the mill. Pop our end mill back out. This job is a bit tedious. Now at this point, gauge piece can go back in. Get our chips out of the way. And we don't forget to unlock our table. And we can move to the next hole. so with our first series of holes drilled to 1/2 inch, we can unlock our column, we can raise our head, and we can get this spacer out of the way. And with our spacer out of the way, we can see that the 1/2 inch end mill doesn't quite open up the hole all the way, but that's no matter. So right now we're still lined up on the forwardmost hole. But let me show you how to verify that we're on center and then take it out to the next size. This is a 1/2 inch Morse taper. It tapers from about 1/1000th under 1/2 of an inch down at this side to about 1/1000th over 1/2 of an inch at this side. In the middle, it's dead on 1/2. Morse taper fits in a 1/2 inch collet just fine. So once you get it in there, we can lock it down. Lower the head on our mill back down. The table is still locked. Once we get the head of the mill down, find that our Morse taper plunges perfectly into the hole. So that's good enough to start our end mill. Alright, so if you guys thought the last part of this was tedious, you haven't seen anything yet. To drill these holes to 5/8, I got to switch between a 1/2 inch and a 5/8 inch collet, and my 1/2 inch Morse taper and my 5/8 inch end mill to make the holes 5/8 inch at the end. So, mill on, engage hand wheel, get in as close as we can to our work, add a little bit of lube. Start cutting. And just like that, times 5. All right, so there you have it. 2 bolt patterns in 1 drum. Now, one thing I will readily cop to here is that on the last drum, I actually took and I countersunk each of these holes while the drum was in the mill. Basically, that's another tool change out. I did it as I final machined the 5/8 inch hole. Because you're already lined up and it's much easier to change a tool than it is to realign. And honestly, I probably would have done it on this one too, but I forgot and started moving around the pattern because I got my head in the space of filming a video and not machining the part. But
I'm not going to do that on this drum. I'm just going to do it by hand in a hand drill. I got real sand on the last one. I made sure every chamfer was exactly 25 thousandths of an inch. You can do it by hand just as good, and it's completely not critical on this part. So that is, if you want to talk about best practices, that would be a best practice. But there you go, Chevy and Ford pattern on a drum. I just got to get these cleaned up now, get them painted, and get the rest of the brakes swapped on the car. Axles too.
All right, guys, thanks so much for watching again this week. Please make sure you hit that like button if you like what you saw in today's video. Hit me up in the comments to let me know what you want to see more of in future videos. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And I guess you're supposed to hit the notification bell too, because otherwise you won't see my videos. Anyway, thanks again so much. We're going to come back in a week or two. We're going to be doing some machining on this vintage set of American Racing torque thrust wheels. I must be crazy. That's why they call me Crazy Casey though. All right, thanks so much for watching this week, you guys, and I'll see you next week.